And the next item is item number 17, application for a certificate of appropriateness in the Borough of Manhattan, docket number 15-1636, block 1209, lot 23, 21 West 95th Street in the Upper West Side, Central Park West Historic District. A Renaissance Revival style row house designed by Gilbert A. Schellinger and built in 1892 to 93. This is an application to demolish an existing rear extension and construct rooftop and rear yard additions. This was also read into the record on May 20th and is being presented for the first time today.
Good afternoon, Commissioners. Emma Waterloo, Preservation staff. The item before you is for 21 West 95th Street in the Upper West Side, Central Park West Historic District. The building is located mid-block on the north side of the street between Central Park West and Columbus Avenue. The proposal has two parts. The first part is to demolish an existing full-height, partial-width rear yard addition and construct a new full-height, full-width rear yard addition. The second part is to construct a rooftop addition. The project applicant is here to further explain the proposal and answer your questions.
Okay, thank you. And the hearing is open. Motion, second. Thank you.
Good afternoon, Commissioners. My name is Peter Sewell of Mullane and Associates. The project we presented to you was developed by Richard Allen Architect as the architect of record and with the consultancy of Greg Rothstein, architect. 21 West 95th Street currently is a four-family house, and it has been so for the past 40 years or so. And the new owners would like to convert it into a single family house. I'll go through the photographs and the drawings to give you a general introduction. The proposal essentially is comprised of a rooftop addition and the modification of an existing rear yard extension, which we surmise was done sometimes in the 1930s or 40s. The photographs in this slide don't really show us particularly the conditions. This is an aerial photograph. This is 21 West 95th Street showing the rear yard extension. The two buildings to the west also have rear yard extensions, except not centrally located as the existing conditions of 21 is, and I'll point those out to you. To the west, there is also an extension of the adjacent building, unfortunately not seen because of a very, very large backyard tree. All four of them, including the existing extension of number 21, are full height up to the roof. Essentially more of the same photograph. This is the existing centrally located, meaning that there are two tiny side yards on the lot, approximately 4.5, 5 feet wide on both sides. This is the extension to the east, and the extension to the left is also a side extension, fully extending the roof, not visible because of that large tree. I briefly mentioned that the application currently does not include any front facade work, but the owners are very strongly considering replacing a vintage 1970 entrance assembly and some very crudely inserted air conditioning, tunable air conditioners, as well as replacing the windows. These photographs show close-up views of the existing extension. This photograph shows the existing extension. It is centrally located with two narrow side yards on the lot, which are practically useless for landscaping or for any kind of recreational activities. Otherwise, the rear garden is a relatively standard townhouse garden. The front facade, as I mentioned, existing and proposed is the same, other than what the owner is considering eventually to restore original entrance doors, And of course, this shows the rooftop addition, which I'll introduce you to in more details as we progress through the drawings. This is a drawing of the existing rear facade. This is number 21. And the centrally located extension, which currently extends to the north well over 2 feet beyond the 30-foot rear yard limit requirement. And the extension of the easterly neighbor and even beyond is approximately the same depth, but it's to the side, and the same situation with the neighbor to the west. This is the proposed rear modification of the existing extension. It actually is cut back to the south to maintain the 30-foot requirement for the rear yard, and it reaches up to the roof height as all of the other current extensions are, and it shows the rooftop addition, which is 4 feet back from the original facades of the original townhouses. Just for a moment, the material would be salvage brick, which we're hoping to recover from the demolition of the current narrow central extension. We have a fairly large extent of fenestrations at the garden at the first floor. We have a 2-story high space behind it, and on the second and third floors there are casement windows or French doors, if you will, with simple guardrails, stone sills, stone window headers, and a simple masonry ending of the extension itself, with the required guardrail and the penthouse behind it, which would be finished in a muted stucco color. The section of the existing building, this is the line of the original late 19th century rear facade, and this is the existing extension that I described to you, and we also illustrated in the photographs. The proposed, the extension rebuilt, but 2.5 feet back from the current one to maintain the 30-foot rear yard. The rooftop addition is 11 feet high, flat roofed. It is set back 4 feet from the facade of the original townhouses and the original inside of the block. And of course, we made mock-ups of it, which staff viewed twice, and I'll show you those photographs. In plan, what I described regarding the rear extension is illustrated here. This is the garden level. This is the existing extension, 27 feet from the rear lot line. It would be demolished and then rebuilt to the maximum 30 feet required at the width of the lot. And then as we progress through the upper floors, you see the existing extension with the 2 narrow, practically useless side yards, if you will. And then this is the new addition. Same thing on the 3rd floor. And we reach the 3rd floor. And we reach the rooftop level. This is where the current extension ends. This is where the new proposed extension would end. And of course, it would serve as a terrace for the sunroom headed up at the rooftop. If you can see it here, this is the line of the original rear facades, and it is set back 4 feet from that facade line, from the plane of that facade. And these are the markups as with the dimensions that were shown on the previous drawings. Thank you very much.
Okay, questions? Michael? Have you, it's unlikely that you're gonna get enough salvage brick out of that existing thing. Have you shown staff samples of possible replacement bricks?
No, we did not, but we were successful on other projects getting salvage brick, and whatever we could salvage, we put it on the rear facade, not on the side walls. And it's possible to get very, very close.
Well,
But I'd be more than
You've
happy
got
to.
Portland cement mortar here from the 1930s, so it's gonna be much less likely that you'll be able to get those things out.
No, I'm speaking of the brick only.
Okay. Any other questions?
Just, okay, so just looking at the rear of your building, and there are buildings beside it that are currently like your building, right? Or they're similar, or they were built, they're the same height?
Yes, yes,
right?
if we could, we
That
quickly get
elevation.
back to the photographs, that gives you the illustration. That is the easterly lot line of number 21, and this is the adjacent building to the east. It's painted brick, but close up, and we examined it with staff, they are essentially the same brick.
Okay, now,
To the west, you can also see similar situation. And perhaps this shows you best the conditions.
And now, so in other buildings, some other buildings that we did where there were similar buildings on either side, we actually looked at not building up to the top floor, you know?
Is there a row? Can you see from an elevation? Is
Can
there
you
a
see
row
it
back
anywhere?
there?
I can't
This,
tell.
this is actually.
I'm sorry.
Or is it all built out already?
There.
Oh, it's all built up, except the existing extension, I'm sorry.
Hold on. Sarah, answer,
They don't
please.
have floors.
This row, all of the buildings feature full-height L extensions, so they're
Ls.
partial width, full-height extensions, and the proposal is for a full-width, full-height addition. So it would match the height of the other additions in the row, but it would be the only one that is full-width.
And if you look at the entire,
Did I understand that they were all rebuilt at some time? They're original?
No.
Okay.
yeah, I just wanted to ask the applicant if, you know, because I had the same question a bit, which is that looking at the entire block, right near you, clearly there are full-height additions, absolutely. But along the entire block, there are almost, I'd say most of the time, the top floor is still revealed, because either you've got a 3-story addition with a 5-story building, or you've got, let's say or else you've got situations, you've got a higher building, you may have a high addition, but you've got a higher, building. Of course, here you do have the L built out already, and I was going to ask about, I take it the top floor really doesn't currently retain much of its original fenestration, though it's not clear to me from what's going on, so that was one of, so what would be your argument for it's appropriate in this block for the full height, full width addition? Just state your
And to grant
premise.
back because of the 30-foot rear yard requirement. Thank you.
Okay, go to testimony. We have a fair amount of it. Barbara Zay first, please. Okay, and then the borough president. Or the borough president right now. Borough President Gail Brewer, please. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I appreciate the opportunity to testify. I'm here to support the resolution passed by CUNY Board 7 regarding 21 West 95th Street. I hope you disapprove the rear yard addition. In full disclosure, I also live on the block in question. I've done my due diligence and contacted the Conflicts of Interest Board and have been told because we live further west, there's no conflict with my testimony here today. The resolution in summary approves the rooftop addition, but finds the design of the rear yard addition to be inappropriate to the historic character of the building and the historic district. In general, I join those who are concerned that a growing pattern of development threatens a particular characteristic of our landmark neighborhoods on the west side and elsewhere. the historic and beautiful garden spaces behind the brownstones in landmark districts are a distinctive feature of the community-oriented brownstone neighborhoods. These green spaces or donuts are special and a treasured feature of all that makes these neighborhoods appropriate to be landmarked. And I'm going to summarize some of this. Prior to being elected borough president, when I was in the city council, I strived to strengthen the laws protecting landmarks and preserve the donut. We worked with such experts in the field as Eva Mason from the group Sustainable Yards to find effective ways to incentivize property owners to retain this important green space. So this is not a new issue for me. There has been legislation introduced in the state to establish a green tax abatement for removing impermeable surfaces and replacing them with soil or vegetation. Let me be clear, in my opinion, we should be looking for ways to encourage this type of development, not the opposite. So I hope that the LPC takes these concerns into consideration when deliberating this particular item. The new owner of 21 West 95th Street is planning, in my opinion, an aggressive development that will intrude on the character of the treasured block. As we know, there was one family there for 45 years. I have no problem with the extension on the roof, but we do have a problem with the extension into the rear yard. So limiting this project will have positive implications far beyond this particular property. I believe that disapproval of the rear yard addition sends a message that preserving the special qualities of the brownstone donuts everywhere is important to the environment and to our beloved city. Thank you very much, and I'll leave copies.
Good, thank you very much. Mark Diller now from Community Board 7 to follow up on that. Thank you.
Good afternoon, Commissioners. I'm Mark Diller from Community Board 7, member of its steering committee and of the Preservation Committee, here to present our resolution. Our resolution approves the rooftop addition. We find it to be appropriate size and scale relative to those already in the neighborhood. But our resolution disapproves the rear yard addition for a number of reasons. But before I mention them, I would express our chagrin that no part of front facade restoration work is a part of this application. We like to see all of those things put into one bundle so that the front and the back all get a little bit of love at the same time, and this is not the case in this application. Our concerns are relate to the columns of windows on the rear facade as our first point. They, for some reason, have them go 2 by 2 instead of the typical rear yard tripartite arrangement, which, with some exceptions, still exists in this rear yard. We find that to be inappropriate. The windows at the top floors are articulated as punched openings, but again, for some reason, the heights of them don't align with the windows next door on either side. This appears to have no justification, and we were disappointed in that aspect of the application. Also, the glazings of the windows appear on the lower level, the lower 2 levels of the rear facade, appear to have been intended to be doors at some point, and no longer function as doors, but they still read as doors, and it would be an aggressive use of a rear yard fenestration to do that anyway, but certainly if there's no functionality attached to it, it makes no sense in this application at all. Finally, and I'm going off brief a little bit, so perhaps this is just my observation, which I'll share with you. There are always concerns about full-width additions in historic districts. And this is one of those instances where it comes to life. The full-width addition would leave a very narrow cul-de-sac, if you will, or light well next to the adjacent building. Ordinarily that is by itself a problem. In this case, there is an historic character-worthy bay window, which, as I believe you'll hear in later testimony, is actually an octagonal-shaped room in the L extension of the building next door, whose light and I believe there's a stained glass element in that window will be at best obscured, and at worst you'll be able to reach out the window and touch the building next door, which is, I'm trying to learn not to use adjectives, but certainly it is not appropriate to the character of the rear yard that the borough president and others will be testifying about. So for those reasons, CB7 asks you to disapprove the rear yard addition. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you. Sheila Gordon.
Thank you very much. Thanks to all of you for your wonderful public service on doing this to help preserve the historic character of our city. Thanks to the person from Community Board who just spoke about this, this feature, which I will emphasize in my remarks, is an original octagonal shaped room which we use as a library on the parlor floor of the extension. It's a very beautiful room, and it has a stained glass window, beautiful sort of lavender stained glass window that faces east. It would be entirely obscured with this expansion. These buildings, this building was the crown of the 4 buildings that Gilbert Schellinger built in 1891. And this was the larger building, which had the full elegant stoop outside and the full extension, and this very special room, which, as I've said, has both the original and unusual octagonal shape and the stained glass window. And as I'm sure you know much better than I, and which we read in the wonderful 1990 document explaining the historic landmark districts, that this was a period when these buildings were built in which the West Side pioneered in doing unusual architectural features to these row houses, which had not been on the East Side, but which were on the West Side. And so that it makes it very distinctive, and a reason, obviously, that this particular feature is something certainly to be preserved and not obscured. In addition, the cul-de-sac, which Mr. Diller referred to, is also part of the sawtooth effect of the backyards, which you can see from an exterior view or from down there. And this was clearly part of the original architectural concept, which is being obscured as well. So I bring this certainly to your attention. As Mr. Diller explained, this octagonal room and the window will be completely obscured for any view through this kind of extension. Question?
Just want to make sure you state your name
sure.
for the record. I'm not sure you actually put your name on the record.
Okay.
Just state your name, that's
My
all.
name is Sheila Gordon, and I'm the
Okay.
owner of number 23 West 95th Street.
Okay.
Thank you, and
Got
have
it.
lived there for over a third of the lifetime of the building, as have many of our neighbors. So we know a great deal about this neighborhood.
Sure.
And the notion of preserving and nurturing the donut holes, the sawtooth, lovely donut holes that exist behind our homes, is very precious to all of us. In the 3 days that we have had to prepare for this hearing, we have been able to collect nearly 50 signatures to a petition. It was easy. We had other things that we were doing. We will, if we need, collect many more from our neighbors both on our block and on 96th Street facing us that affirm the importance and commitment to this kind of architectural feature that we all share. So I thank you again for your attention and for your work on behalf of all of us.
Thank you. Cal Snyder. Is it Cal Snyder? I don't know how to get the name right. And then, yep, please.
Cal Snyder. I'm a resident of 29 West 95th Street. Technical issues are familiar to the commission. I speak to the context of the proposed alterations. The designs that comprise the brownstone environment of the West Side were originally a response to a ruinous real estate speculation in the 19th century that engulfed one middle-class neighborhood after another. The city wisely foresaw a need not only to regulate height, density, and use, but to foster common values and principles of good design. Of course, the brownstone blocks that we live in were built by speculators, but the quality of what they produced was dictated not only by prevailing taste and economies of scale, it was the zoning envelope and the values that informed it a wise government used to create these residential spaces. Today's real estate frenzy is not different in its goals than the 19th century's. It once again threatens the quality of life in protected neighborhoods like our own, and its proponents again ask you to approve the degradation of those neighborhoods so that they might profit more. The north side of West 95th Street is an exceptional ensemble, almost entirely intact front and back. Whenever such ensembles of architectural and cultural distinction exist, we have a collective responsibility for preserving not only the buildings, but the communities that rely on them. The proposal before you, while full of technical matters, is at heart about those values. Some of these are architectural and historic, while others are social. They ask us to convey to our inheritors whatever has proven exceptional, useful, and enduring. For preservationists, planners, communities, and families alike, we are wise when we do so. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Barbara Zay.
Barbara Zay of the Historic Districts Council. HDC is glad to see that the rooftop addition is not visible from the street. Our committee appreciates that the proposed rear addition does not extend farther into the yard than the current footprint, but laments the widening of the existing addition. The current configuration features nice windows on either side of its T-shaped bump out, which complement and give texture to the facade. It seems like a shame to lose this for a small amount of additional space. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Barbara Gerson.
I'm Barbara Gerson. I live at number 19 West 95th Street, directly adjacent to the proposed, to the building to which the proposed additions are made. You've heard a lot about the historic character of the neighborhood. Historically, this block of 40 row houses was built in the 1890s. It's been home to professionals, merchants, theater people, tradespeople, single people, white and black, with and without children, multi-generational families, many of whom have owned their buildings for more than, as Sheila mentioned, a third of their the lifetimes of their dwellings and more than half their lifetimes. With very few rooming houses, which included number 21 at one time, our block retained this character well into the low point of the 1970s when my husband and I bought, until today. We know that our rear yard extension at number 19 is original to the house, as is the extension in number 17. We know this from the ghost imprint of stairs between the parlor and basement floors in the serving pantry, and the remains of the dumbwaiters on the 3 upper floors. We assume the rear yard extension in number 23, as Sheila mentioned, is original by the placement of the stained glass window and period interior details, such as signaling bells and original wainscoting. The extensions, despite their full height, have spaces between the houses ranging from 8 to 16 feet, allowing for windows on all walls, 3 exposures, north, east, and west, and light and air to penetrate the north-facing gardens. Allowing the construction of a full-width extension would reduce that space between buildings by half and create the only full lot width extension on the block. The extensions all down the block, whether original or not, are modest, and I've attached a photo in the back of my statement, each capturing a little bit of light and air for more than just the single owner. Imagine if they were all converted to maximum zoning with Community Board and Landmarks Commission approval, as was 28 West 96th Street, which is our neighbor to the north, which also I have a photograph in my submission. What a terrible loss it would be, and what a destruction of the character of the neighborhood. The architects and developers of the Upper West Side at the turn of the 20th century were not thinking about just donut holes. They envisioned a livable community. Economics and the market have changed, as we all know too well, but that's why the Landmarks Preservation Law was enacted, to consider what's appropriate, not just what's possible. We shudder at the possibility of trying to live in the dark canyons these donut holes would become.
Okay, thank you. Other testimony? Response to anything that's been said?
Yes, thank you very much. I would start first with the Community Board 7 comments. Thank you very much for all of those, especially the alignment of window fenestrations to adjacent windows and reducing and modifying the details of the garden and the first floor fenestration. We would very, very strongly consider it. To Mrs. Gordon's historical overview, thank you very much. We certainly are not fully aware of everything that you described to us, as well as the other neighbor, and we thank you for all of these comments, and we look forward to your assessment.
Okay,
Thank you.
thank you. Discussion.
Well, in general, of course, we are, fairly open about alternatives for rear yard additions. And I do agree with the comments that were placed about fenestration in particular, and I'm sure we'll hear more about those from some other commissioners, but I think that there was a great deal of relevance to that. My original concern that I voiced about what was going on with the additions throughout the donut was kind of reinforced as I kept looking at the diagram, which was helpfully provided. We have, I think, 29 rear yard additions here, only 4 of which were full width. But interestingly enough, they still preserve a sense of the L-shaped addition. Now, I'm somebody who normally feels pretty comfortable with a full width addition, which is modest. But in this particular block, we really haven't lost the L anywhere, the sense of the L. And I'm feeling kind of unhappy with seeing a full width addition of this height, in this block. I think it isn't. I don't find it appropriate compared to what the context of the donut is right now. And I'd like to hear from other commissioners, but that's how I feel. And with regard to the rooftop addition, I think that is generally acceptable.
Roberta?
I think that the rooftop addition is acceptable, but I think that the rear addition needs to be studied at least. And so either it doesn't go as wide, not a full width, or it's not as tall, but I think that the combination is overwhelming for this block in this particular area.
Mhm.
Those things need to be
Okay, Marjorie?
With respect to the rooftop addition, it's very utilitarian. I no longer believe in utilitarian rooftop additions. It needs to be a design. It needs to be a piece of architecture in addition to which it cannot have stucco. So because that's not an appropriate material for the historic district. With respect to the rear yard addition, that it's an interesting discussion that's been going on about these little L's. We have many rear yard additions proposed where there's an L, and then the proposal is to pull the L back and make the addition full width. But recently, we've been seeing some really clever responses to that, where the architect has taken advantage of the L shape and modified it in some way to meet sort of the new programmatic needs of the client, but still recalling the L in there and creating, in certain cases, quite beautiful solutions. So I look at this as mostly a missed opportunity to recall something about the L without retaining it entirely. And I think actually staff might be very helpful in showing the applicant some of those beautiful solutions where the L and a wider addition were combined into one solution.
Well, I must say that I feel on this particular block, and especially in this section of the block, I think a case could be made for a full height addition that is, we've approved full width additions that are only held down from the top floor because of a desire to maintain a continuity of the block, the donut, such as it is. That continuity never existed in this section of the block. This row of 3 or 4 houses have, as far as we can tell, and from the Sanborn it looks like as well, that they had full height additions from the time they were built or from very shortly thereafter. So I'm not opposed necessarily to the full height addition. I also think that from the point of view of the rhythm of the rear yard, this block and this side of the block has a rhythm of either paired L's or single bump outs that are of varied widths And this rhythm actually works with the proposed addition. I think that it would be better if it were kept at the same width, but I can't find it for myself to be inappropriate because of its volume. I think that the fenestration, that some of the comments about the fenestration are worth considering. I mean, there was no tripartite, there was no real kind of conventional tripartite division on this building, unless one considers the fact that, that center bay that sticks way out and these two little jammed-in windows next to it. So I'm not sure that recreating a tripartite top fenestration is necessarily the correct thing to do in this case. On the other hand, I find that the stridency with which the proposed addition seeks to distance itself from its adjacent neighbors at the top floor is unnecessary, and that either by virtue of the proportion of the windows or their operation or some other way of trying to recreate a sense of rhythm would be better. I also think that the comment about the lower level windows as being windows and not doors is correct. I think it's weird to have windows that go down to the floor but you can't go through. But again, does that make it inappropriate? I don't think so, but it's just weird.
Fred?
Well, with due respect to the extraordinary testimony, including the borough president, I really was studying this closely to try to fully understand what all the fuss is about, honestly. I can't quite see what the fuss is about compared to most of what we have allowed in the rear yard of row houses all over the city and particularly in the Upper West Side. We're not extending past, we're pulling back 3 or 4 feet. We're filling in 2 tiny little spaces, which granted on one side comes closer to a significant part of one floor of one building. I mean, some of those Ls, allow, as this one does, windows into the adjoining properties, which seem to me to be a breach of privacy, although the owners themselves are saying it does allow 3 sides of windows. I think this is an enigma, but I cannot see it as inappropriate. I cannot see it as an intrusion into the donut. I just don't see it as such a big issue here. The top of the building, the addition is modest in scale and has been supported by the neighbors and community board, and I can certainly support that as well. But I really have to admit I'm trying to see it, but I just can't quite see it in all honesty that this is the full-scale attack on the L or a precedent that is frightening to others. I can't quite see it, but I think maybe I'm alone in that feeling. So,
Michael? With the present configuration, that central bay, which retains the 2 flanking window bays on either side at the top level, that to me is an historic feature. At least those 2 flanking windows are an historic feature that I would hate to lose. I'll begin by saying that I'm fine with the rooftop addition. I am troubled by the full height of it, which destroys then that original bay configuration at the top. And I am extremely troubled by the encroachment and consequent diminishment of the feature of the bay at number 23 next door. And so I would be fine with a rooftop addition. I would be okay with an addition that begins on one side and goes 2 bays, but not a full width addition on the rear.
Okay. I think the roof is acceptable, but I believe there are a lot of questions raised, both in the testimony and around this table, about the rear yard addition, which I think needs restudying and consultation with the staff. We won't act on it today, but you'll have that rethinking in light of everything that's been said here. And we'll take it up for decision at another time, but close the hearing today without such a decision. With the motion second, without objection, the hearing is closed. Thank you.
These are comments all over the place.